what it is when it comes to finance is this thing. It's like this mystical concept that's been espoused in the news for the last, I'd say the last 4 years, since the 2008 financial crisis. What's happened is it's been demonized, criticized, and every other word you could think of in the book. It's been an industry that's been overly looked down upon. It's been scrutinized in every possible way. But one thing the news fails to do is define what finance is and what role it plays in our lives. And that kind of thing led me to ask this question: what is the purpose of finance, and how does it influence our lives? The first thing about finance that makes it unique is it's to what's called exchange funds. Because what happens is in finance you have there's two groups of people. There's people that need the money, and there's people that have extra money to invest. And what the stock market does, it enables those funds to be exchanged. And that exchange of funds gives options to companies to grow. For example, let's say Ish Airlines. I'm starting a company. I have roughly 100 employees. In order to grow, create jobs, whatever it be, I need money, I need capital. Money and capital are the same thing. And I need this money in order to grow. And so what I do is I have two options. I can either go to the bank and get a loan, which is probably going to be quite expensive these days, or I can hit the stock market. What I do is I call what they call an investment banker. An investment banker from a firm like JP Morgan Chase, Morgan Stanley would come out. And what they do is they actually look at the stock. They set up what they call an IPO, initial public offer. What happens is this initial public offer, they take a piece of my company and split it up into shares. And then what they do is they value those shares, let's say $10 per. And that $10 per is then given out to the stock market. People like you guys are able to purchase shares of Ish Airlines. And that gives you guys a stake in my company, even though it may seem small, one share. Some people will have 10,000 shares, depends. And it gives you a stake within Ish Airlines. The second purpose of finance is what they call risk aversion. Risk is anything bad. It's like me walking down this thing, I could trip. And risk is bad in any form, meaning that it's something that could cause problems for everybody. So we could fall, trip over something, that's a risk. Risk in finance, for example, is minimized by what's it called? Spreading risk. So let's say I have two options. Going back to that loan example, I can either take out a loan, and let's say I have $200,000 in my savings. I can either risk all of my life savings, put it into Ish Airlines, or I can share the risk among everybody by issuing stock. So what happens is, rather than me taking just the risk alone, it's spread among everybody. There's also what they call another form of risk management is what they call futures. Futures are something that really plays a big role in our society. For example, there's two people. One's a manufacturer, and one, let's say not a manufacturer, like a resource. They grow, a good example, a farmer that grows onions. And then on the other side, you have buyers that process the onions. What happens is they make a contract in order to buy onions at a set price, at today's price, in the future, let's say 6 months in advance. And what happens is these are contracts called futures, and these contracts are then allows this person to go into the future, and so they are able to buy onions at today's price 6 months down the road by signing a contract. And these contracts can also be traded on the market. For example, let's say Ish Airlines needs to buy fuel for our planes. So what we do is we buy, let's say oil today is $100 a barrel, and tomorrow it's going to, we're guessing it's going to increase to $125 a barrel. So in order to minimize risk, we're going to buy the oil today. And what we do is we buy, let's say, a certain amount of barrels in the future. And so what that does, it prevents me from spending an insane amount of money in the future, and I'm minimizing risk. The reason I mentioned futures is because futures play a big role in our society. I think who has gone to the pump these days and see the gas prices just shoot up? So these oil futures are being set. These contracts are being put in place. And what happens is these contracts are traded on what they call a futures market, similar to a stock market, but they trade contracts instead. And what happens is when these speculators, people that are just buy these futures and make profit on them, they sit there like, I wonder if the price is going to go up, so they keep buying them. And it's basic economics they teach us in high school, college. It's like the more you demand something, the more the price increases. So that's a role that futures play in our society. Finance is something that I think is relatively not understood in our society. People have a limited understanding of it. And I hope my speech has inspired you guys to go forward and look through and be, as Americans, we have to be what they call critical consumers. We have to think, we have to know what we're getting into. The finance markets, these things play such a huge role in our society, and I feel like we're not familiar with them. And I wish you the best.
All right, at this point, if you take
non-existent guest. I like Ish. I'm not even a little bit hesitant about saying that. Whatever he talks about, I like to hear him talk. He just has this quality. Now, I want to explain something. He does need to speak up a little bit, and he does have a tendency to bounce. It looked like he just got off the Starbucks tall milk and grande with a double shot of espresso. He's going like this, and he kind of stands in one spot, and as a gesture, there's a crapulous amount of gesture. And that would be the only thing I'd say. Slow it down a little bit, Ish. You are a good speaker. For the second speech, I'm amazed. He has already got qualities that'll take him. He could be like an international, like Karen said, he could be an international speaker before long. He had good contact, eye contact. His speech was organized except for the conclusion. I'm not sure what I'm supposed to do. Should I get a loan? Should I get go futures or whatever? The conclusion was a little weak in terms of what are we supposed to take away from it. I think basically the call to action is basically what you needed. And otherwise, let's everyone give a hand to Ish, because I really enjoyed